Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast here in Indianapolis at the Combine. We talked to linebackers and defensive linemen. We were going to give you our feedback here, and I say we because I'm joined by Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com. It's going to be a fun episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. to get started. As before, we're joined by Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com. He's been on the show with us several times. And Nick, it was an exciting time. We got to bounce around for the first day on Wednesday, going between defensive line prospects and linebacker prospects and getting our first chance to cut things into them. These aren't the strongest classes of this year in the draft. Like everyone's going to look at tackle. Everyone's going to look at corner. You know, the quarterbacks are going to be exciting. Wide receivers really deep. Linebacker, D-line, there's some good guys in there. But what were your first impressions or some of the bigger takeaways or anyone that impressed you in your going arounds and talking to guys at the podium?
Yeah, there were a few guys that really impressed me. I know he was a late addition to it because some of these D linemen didn't talk because medicals take longer on the big boys. But Tavondre Sweat did a late presser. I went down there for it, man. Natural. Funny dude, he's a massive nose tackle. I mean, he's like 365.
Huge.
Like he's big, man. But he's funny, charismatic. He's a freak athlete. He stood up there like very charismatic. He is himself unapologetically. I love that about a guy that can fit in there. I thought all the linebackers, man, like really had good kind of views of their game. I didn't really like Junior Colson really impressed me with how he kind of commanded the room. And he looked like a green dot leader to me. Like he looked confident. I really like the leadership factor of the linebackers. I don't think that intangibles are missing from any of these top guys that we're talking about today, whether that's Colson, Cooper, Trotter, Wilson, Eichenberg, whatever. I think that every one of those guys has intangibles that you really like. For a leader of your football team, I like some of these guys' mindsets. I really like the mindset of a guy like Johnny Newton, who knows who he is. He knows he's a explosive pass rusher. He's not going to try to be, this different type of guy. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's watching. I also like Ruka Rororo out of Clemson. I hope I said that right. Clemson guy was
I've messed that one up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. Because it's the same sound basically 3 times over. So it can be a bit of a tongue twister. But yeah, he really, man, he is like very impressive. Like his ability to be a sponge, like he talked about his prep and how he grew and where he kind of is working still, acknowledged he's a little raw as a pass rusher, which he is, but he's a great run defender, maybe one of the best, if not the best in the class. Like I was really impressed by him. So a lot of these guys at the interview stand, it's about kind of feeling out what they are, who they are, how they fit into a locker room. A lot of these guys, put themselves up for me. I only get to talk to them for 10 minutes. So it's a very small glimpse, but I was impressed by a few of these guys.
I was impressed too. I thought there were some guys that really had good heads on their shoulders. I'll say also Cedric Gray, linebacker out of North Carolina. I was impressed by some of the answers he gave, talking about his game. He also took the opportunity to talk about how much he was a Steelers fan growing up. And that was certainly funny. He talked about how Troy Polamalu was his favorite player. It was an honor talking to Mike Tomlin. And he was like, I think we found out that he had a Troy Polamalu tattoo. That was there's a lot of things that I thought that was kind of funny there. But I get the sense that there are a few green dot type of guys in this draft class, guys that can communicate. I talked to Edgerrin Cooper about it. He was like, yeah, more, at Texas A&M, he's like, we were more or less about like, the signals came from the sidelines. And then like at the linebacker position, we just did the checks. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, can the Steelers find a guy in this draft class at linebacker with the right fit for the right pick to be a future leader in their defense. Peyton Wilson's another guy, but his injury history is where he's at. He said that, the talks that he's had with coaches, that he feels good about, his injury history. He was less hurt this past year. He feels that part of it was the way that he trained and the way he took on his diet, and things allowed him to kind of, protect his body a little bit better. But I just look at this, and I think one thing that the Steelers want and need out of a linebacker is a guy who can run the defense in the middle part of the field. Jeremiah Trotter, another guy I thought impressed as well.
Yeah, Trotter's a natural, right? I mean, right, he grew up around the game. His dad was a linebacker. Steelers flashlights go up when you hear NFL bloodlines, all this. But he's a type of guy that they would really like. He's a hard-nosed player. He's not an elite athlete on tape, but he is a guy that comes downhill. A little bit smaller. He's only going to be about 6 feet tall. He's about 230, but he plays with physicality. He's got great football IQ, really good in zone coverage, so he makes up for it in a lot of areas. I'll tell you what, the biggest winner of the linebackers to me was Junior Colson. I love the guy's makeup. He rides for his guys. I didn't really obviously pay attention specifically to this press conference because of JJ McCarthy, but he was asked about JJ McCarthy and kind of his defense of him, his ability to ride for those guys, staunchly doing that, the loyalty. I really love seeing that. And I loved seeing his feistiness. He is a physical player. He loves to hit, and he is a great, great player in terms of his toughness. This guy wore a cast on his hand and kept playing. He basically said today, unless I'm in a wheelchair, I'm playing. That is crazy stuff. But if you play linebacker in the NFL, Chris, you have a little bit of stuff up there that might be a little off the chain. So,
right.
Colson, man, I think he's a really good player. The tape's real good too. If you want a coverage guy that can just cover ground and do whatever you want, he has it. I really like Junior Colson. So he's one of my favorites of this. Edgerrin Cooper's a different type of guy. Took a huge leap this year, but man, I'll tell you what, the podium that impressed me the most was Junior Colson. I really
that carries value with it, because the Steelers are also looking for character guys, locker room guys, on top of the on-field value. And I do like Junior Colson's tape. The way I've seen him, and I haven't studied him in depth yet. I'm still kind of compiling my reviews all across the board. But one thing I noticed about Junior Colson, he can get downhill fast and hit hard. And that's something that the Steelers definitely value. You look at guys like Quan Alexander, guys like Landon Roberts this past year. That's what they do. And I think the bigger question I had was, could he do that? Could he do well in coverage? Could he cover guys out the backfield? Could he help check tight ends off the line of scrimmage and contribute in coverage that way, and not be a liability that when teams see him lining up at the mic, or just the Steelers inside linebacker position and playing off ball, that they can say, aha, that's where we're targeting. And that starts to become the weakness that kind of opens up holes in the Steelers defense. If the Steelers can get a guy like that in this draft class that can kind of conduct the middle part of the field and be a cover guy while also up against the run, I think that is such a boost in this draft class, because that's something they haven't had as a draft pick in a very long time.
Yeah, I think Colson is that guy. The more tape I watched, the more I saw the reps where he did it. And he was asked to do a lot. That's one thing I really like about the scheme he comes from is obviously an NFL scheme. It's the Mike McDonald scheme, basically. I mean, they keep running it even when he left for Baltimore. He's a great blitzer. He was asked to do a lot in coverage, roam around. He was asked to be Roquan Smith in that defense. I do like that fact that he was asked to do a lot, because the Steelers asked their linebackers to do a ton. If you are not ready to do it all in the Steelers defense, you're going to struggle as a linebacker, because they ask a lot of their linebackers in coverage. I think Colson can do that. I think Peyton Wilson can do that. We know about his athleticism and freakish nature. Cedric Gray, I like that shout out that you gave to him. I really have liked his game for a long time. Just watching him in North Carolina, man, his ability to zone drop and take away middle of the field windows is really, really good. I'm not sure about his man ability, but I know in zone, if you let him kind of lurk, he can do a Tampa 2 pull run. He can do all of that stuff. He's done it. So I like Cedric Gray a lot as a mid-round guy. None of these guys we're talking about, I feel the need to put a caveat on this. None of these guys we're talking about are in play at 20 to me.
No.
We're talking 51, 80, and 84 with most of these guys. So it's
And
not a good linebacker class.
And I even feel like most of these guys, like outside of like the Colsons, like the top of the linebacker, like most of these guys aren't even 51. These guys, a lot of these guys are going to be 84 in that range, in that third round, some of them even fourth round. But again, if you get that guy in the middle of your defense, that can do a lot there. But what kind of defensive linemen are the Steelers taking a look at? We'll discuss that right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast right after this. I want to remind you, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. What's the first thing that you would do if you had an extra hour in your day? Maybe you go for a run, read a book, or be there for a friend. But what about being there for yourself? That's where therapy can come in and help you find what matters most to you so that you can do more of that. I've benefited from the help of a good therapist in my life who's helped me sort through some important things and figure out what is most important to try to balance every single day. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp knows life can be busy and stressful, so it's designed to be suitable for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, because BetterHelp knows it's important to find the right fit. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. HELP.com/lockedon.
You are
back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com. Nick, let's talk about these defensive linemen in this class, because there were some guys you talked about. You got to talk to Devondre Sweat. I was one of those people that waited an hour for him, and then I had to go fulfill other duties and bounce around a little bit. So I missed out on him. But I did get to talk to his teammate, Byron Murphy, a little bit here. And Byron Murphy, I'll get your thoughts on him in a sec. I thought there's some that say he's the best defensive lineman in this draft class. Some say it's Drazon Newton. Some people differ in different opinions. But here is when I got to ask him about the Steelers and talk and got the chance to talk to Byron Murphy a little bit. Here was what he sounded like at the NFL podium at the Combine.
To be on the lookout for him.
Byron, have you met with the Steelers and Mike Tomlin yet at all?
Yes, I have yesterday.
What was your first impression?
Man, I really, I loved it. I really enjoyed the interview with Mike Tomlin. I feel like, I could relate to him in so many ways. Him and his staff. And I just like Pittsburgh, as a whole, really.
What makes you the best defensive line prospect in this draft class?
What made me the best defensive lineman? I'll say just my style and play, how I play, and how I play each and every play in, play out. I say my effort is like no other. I don't think nobody has the same effort as me or the same determination or the mindset as me.
So that's Byron Murphy. And again, he's like the higher profile of the two Texas defensive tackles. And there are two. Now, Nick, as you brought up, Devondre Sweat is a huge human being. Byron Murphy's more of like, he's still big. Like, he's not small, but he is, he's more of like a traditional kind of defensive line build here. What kind of lineman should the Steelers be going for? Because you and I were talking about one guy who also was very late to the podium because of medicals, and Michael Hall. And Michael Hall is one of those smaller, shorter guys that don't have, but those guys are becoming more prominent in the NFL. Kalijah Kancey, a guy that you and I covered at Pitt in his time with the Panthers, he was a first-round pick, and he was doing some serious work for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. What kind of defensive lineman should the Steelers be targeting this year?
Yeah, it's interesting. So they got Benton last year as the nose, but I think it's time for Keanu to start branching out to 3 and seeing what he can do there, right? He should be 3 in. What they could use is a true 5 now. Like, that's what they could use, man. Cam Hayward's 35. Ogunjobi is 30 on a big contract. They need someone there. They need a guy that can be that sub-package 3, can be a real jolt at the 4-eye, can go out to a true 5, and they have some options in this class if they want that. Devondre Sweat is completely opposite of Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy's 6'1", about 305. Devondre Sweat is a legit 360. It's completely legit. You see it. He is one of the most massive humans you have ever seen. So I don't feel like a Devondre Sweat, for example, is the type of guy this team's looking for. I think they're going to be looking for a guy like a Michael Hall who can be that jolt, who can be a real pass rush, fearsome kind of pass rusher in sub packages. Like I think they need another sub package rusher here. Now last year that was Armon Watts. Armon Watts is a free agent though. They need help in the depth areas. DeMarvin Leal did not become that guy, or has not at least yet. I think they're looking at a guy like that. Michael Hall could fit that. I think Johnny Newton has some interesting things that could fit there. Murphy fits that. Another guy, I think Rugo Rororo fits that too. He's a different type of guy. He's a bit raw as the pass rusher, but like best run defender maybe in the class in terms of those guys that aren't going to, be a true 100% nose. Like I would look at that 5-tech, 3-tech pass rush juice guy, which is why personally to me, I think my favorite fit for them is Michael Hall. I really like him. Unfortunately, we didn't get to talk to him. He did come at some point between the time that I left, you left, and T'Vondre Sweat came in. He did talk at some point, but he's a different type of athlete. He's an explosive player. He's quick, and Ohio State played him out of position. We're talking about a guy that is 6'1", 280 and played nose. He played nose in the Big Ten. He's not going to be a nose tackle in the NFL. He's going to be a 3-5. So I'm very interested to see that. But I know, and I told you this, Chris, today at the Senior Bowl, Michael Hall was very, very, very hounded by Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin was all around him, challenging him to do this, challenging him to do that. You know who he was challenging last year? Keanu Benton. So keep an eye on it.
Certainly. And that was what kind of was disappointing because I heard some really good things about Michael Hall from an Ohio State writer that I was talking to at the Combine. So I was really excited to see that because I remember talking to Keanu Benton at the Combine, and I even included clips of that on the show last year. And I was like, oh, that guy screams Steeler. Like just the way that he talks. And not that he's running for president anytime soon. But like I was just like Keanu, seemed he gets it, like he understands what's important and things like that. So like I look at here and I'm saying like, this is this could have been interesting. So it was disappointing to not talk to him. But we got to see different guys. One guy that I got to talk to early on was Darius Robinson, and I wanted to ask you about him because he's one of those guys that is kind of he even said it like, look, I'll play whatever you want me to play. Some people have him as an edge rusher. Some people have him as an interior defensive lineman. He talked about how he's played both at like 280 and at 320 and things like that. He's moved up and down. Where is your stance on Darius Robinson? He's out of Missouri. For those who don't know, some people project him as a second-round pick. Would that be a fit for the Steelers? Do you feel like that's kind of going back into the DeMarvin Leal range of a tweener type of guy?
There's a bunch of like tweener guys in this class. Eric Watts from Connecticut, like bunch of them. Miles Cole, but yeah, he's like the big one, right? He's a round one, probably fringe player. He had a great Senior Bowl. I loved him at the Senior Bowl. I think he's got elite run defense potential. He's got good length. Like he's 6'5", 295. Like he's a real interesting player, but he doesn't really look 295. Like he looks like he's probably like 270, right? Like he kind of carries it a little lightly. But that doesn't mean he can't do well in run defense. He's actually a pretty big hoss there. I think he's a guy that is probably best on the edge. Like I like him better out there as like a base D end in a 4-3. In a 3-4, I think it's a little tougher. You get into that Leal situation where it's like, is he 5? Right. Is he an edge? That's what, Leal's situation is that the Steelers never committed to him being one or the other. If they needed him to be an edge, be an edge. If they needed him to be a 5, they needed him to be a 5. He should have learned one spot first before doing both, but he didn't. So if they get a Darius Robinson, who I think fits more at edge personally, I think he's versatile in alignment. He's played versatile in alignment in their sub packages. So I think that's definitely something. And dude, he is long. Like he is long. 35 inches in arm length. Like I think that's what he's going to measure in at. He's going to be up there. So he's got length. So that gives him ability to move up and down the line. So is he going to be, a 5-tech naturally? Probably not. He's not bulking up to 310, but he could be a tweener. If I were the Steelers though, I think I would probably shy away from that type of tweener, mainly because I think Robinson screams more towards the base D end type of archetype.
Got you. We're going to talk about the linebackers because the Steelers seem to be talking to quite a few of them. More on that after the break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel, the #1 sportsbook in America. There's always great chances to win at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. If you're like me, football season being done doesn't mean that I'm done with sports. FanDuel has so many ways to win and so many ways to play with NBA, NHL, college basketball, and so much more action available. FanDuel makes it so there's so many different ways to win, like quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive prop bets, and so much more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. It's that easy. Just go to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh of SteelersNow.com. All right, Nick, linebacker. Went around, and I was able to bounce around a bit more at the linebackers because I think I fell into the trap in the period where it was both Michael Hall and Devondre Sweat were both super late. So I missed out on more of the defensive lineman prospects that I wanted to talk to. But linebacker, I felt like I got a lot of guys. Peyton Wilson, Cedric Gray. I didn't get to Junior Colson because I was bouncing around between guys, but Edrin Cooper, Jeremiah Trotter, like I got to talk to a bunch of them, and everyone in that group that outside of Peyton Wilson that I talked to said that they had already met with the Steelers, informal or formal. I think several of them were formal. Now, there weren't a whole lot of like the lower level linebackers that could say the same, but that to me shows that the Steelers seem to be putting a considerable interest in making sure that they get linebacker right in this draft class. What was your feedback on just on hearing how on looking at that and seeing like, okay, the Steelers are kind of checking some boxes there?
Yeah, a lot of the other lower level linebackers were informal meetings that you talked about, but all the tops were formals. Like that tells me something. Like they clearly are scouting linebacker and trying to make it a focus at the very least. It's not a great class. We've talked about this, but it's been like 3 bad linebacker classes in a row. It has straight up come back to back to back. So who knows when it's going to be good. The Steelers can't keep kicking the can each year. They need a young linebacker, right? Cole Holcomb, who knows if he's going to come back and be fully what he was. Elana Roberts had a great year last year, probably the best of his career, but last year of his contract. Quan is torn Achilles. Who knows what he's like, and he's probably not going to be ready for the season, maybe even. You could go to free agency, but look at the free agent class. Like it's, you could pay top dollar, I guess, for Patrick Queen, but that's not realistic. So yeah, the draft is probably going to be one of the realistic places. And I think what else they have seen is a lot of the fabric of some of these guys fits what they like at the position. Colson, Trotter. You talk about those guys. Cooper. Cooper's a guy that has just improved every single year. If you improve every single year as a player, it says something about your ability to learn, your coachability, your taking to of coaching. Trotter is an NFL bloodlines guy. Colson is a very high pedigree, great athlete, prototypical size guy. And you even look at guys like Tommy Eichenberg, from Ohio State. You look at Cedric Gray. You look at all those guys. I don't know necessarily if they're going to draft a linebacker. I can't say for sure, but I know Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin went into this process and said, we see some guys on tape we like. These guys fit our scheme well. They fit what we like in the background checks too. They fit a lot of those boxes. And so if there's the right value, the right fit at the right time, we better be ready to take it. And I think that's what this speaks to.
I think so too. I talked about this actually on the Wednesday edition. This is the Thursday edition you're listening to or watching right now. And I talked about if the Steelers can finally get the glue piece at linebacker they've been missing in the defense for so long. Ryan Shazier was special. And I think that there were some people for a while that were wanting to find the next Ryan Shazier, but you don't find Ryan Shaziers in the NFL period very often. Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, those are the superstars of those positions. But if you can find solid linebacker play, guys that can be athletic, guys that aren't liabilities in coverage and are pluses in run defense, and in blitzing the quarterback, that's also important too. Those type of guys can kind of bolster a defense. Look at the Chiefs, their linebacker group. None of them are superstars, but they're all very solid. And I think that's where the Steelers want to get back to. And it helps having a young guy who can kind of be the building piece around that you kind of form things. Edgerrin Cooper, by some, is seen as the best of the linebacker class. Here was Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M when I got to talk to him at the Combine.
Have you talked to Mike Tomlin of the Steelers yet at all?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was good. Great, great conversations going on. Great coach, and just talking it up. They getting to know me, and I'm getting to know them.
What's your first impression of Mike Tomlin? Just like the things that he asked you, how he tried to get to know you.
Great personality. Goofy, silly, just like me. So I feel like that's a great thing. That's my personality.
What's been the most surprising thing to you so far about this combine process?
It's not nothing too much, really. It's just taking it a step at a time, day by day. I feel like I did a good job of preparing myself, so it's pretty going well for me.
Have you had a chance to talk?
So again, Edgerrin Cooper, just giving you a sense of what he was like at the podium. He's another guy out there, but I'm right with you. Like it's obvious the Steelers feel the pressure to get this right. They kind of survived with free agent signings last year. And listen, like Landon Roberts was good. I thought he stepped up in a big way. He was one of the best surprises of the offseason. Cole Holcomb, I felt like was getting there when he was injured, and Quan Alexander, I thought was definitely an asset when he was healthy, but none of them were healthy. And that's where the Steelers, I think they need to find the young guy who's going to be healthy, who can be a leader, who can be part of this core of the defense that they're trying to put together. They already got Porter. They already got Benton as young guys. They add maybe finding an off-ball linebacker that can be the intermittent piece between the secondary and defensive line. That could be a big part of building what they really want to put together.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head when you talked about solid level play. We're not asking, for Fred Warner here. I mean, there are truly only 3 or 4 truly elite alien-like linebackers in this league. Fred Warner, Roquan. Honestly, Levante David's still kicking it like that too. So
it's remarkable how old he's doing it.
It's crazy how he's still doing. But that's the guys we're talking about. The guys that change defenses. They don't need that. But the Steelers have been in this pitfall for 6-7 years at this point, where it has just really hurt them. Now, last year wasn't Omar Khan's fault. He had fixed it. They had a nice group that accentuated each other's strengths and minimized each other's weaknesses. That's what they need again this year. So can they find that guy in this draft? I think they can. We talked about the different flavors of guys. Edgerrin Cooper's an interesting player. I talked about how he just got better every single year. He really did. You looked at him last year in 2022. He was awful in coverage. Like, it was terrible. Like, he was a day 3 player. Then he goes to All-American this year, and you watch his coverage tape. Watch his Alabama tape last year against Jahmyr Gibbs. He absolutely got whooped by Jahmyr Gibbs all day out of the backfield. Then you look at
he also talked about that too. That was a really funny part.
He remembers that game. Like, you remember that game when you get put on like that. And then you look at his coverage this year, just throughout the year. You look at his Alabama tape this year. His Alabama tape this year was awesome. He was in the backfield. I think he had like 3 sacks that game. I may have 2. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3, but he was all over the place. He's a great athlete. He is a really fun player. Like, there are fun players at this position. I don't think there's an elite guy of this group, but I think there are guys that can give you that solid level play, that can become stars, can become a green dot guy, that can become captains, leaders in the room. So I think that's what they want. They need a guy that's young. They've tried to patch this for too long. They need someone that is young. And listen, it's not like they haven't tried to get young linebackers. Devin Bush, Buddy Johnson, Mark Robinson. They've tried. It hasn't worked out yet, but they need a guy in this class that fits the prototypical green dot guy. And we listed all of them. I'll tell you what, Chris, I think my favorite of them is Junior Colson, though. I think he's my linebacker 1. I know it's the combine. We don't have the testing yet and everything, but from tape, interview, everything I have of this guy, I honestly have kind of fallen in kind of love with his tape and everything. He would be a good target if he falls to the right spot, the board falls the right way. Could be a good target for him.
I agree. I think that he sounds like a good target. Nick Farabaugh, a Junior Colson guy.
I am a Junior Colson guy.
All right,
you're a Wilson guy. I know that for a fact.
Yes, I'm a Peyton Wilson guy, but I do like Junior Colson. I haven't studied him as much. Peyton Wilson, I think I just had a stronger connection because I watched him in the ACC and I knew what he was about.
You want a sleeper name?
All right, give me a sleeper name.
UCLA's Darius Muasa. He talked today.
Ooh.
He was impressive. Watch the UCLA tape this kid puts on. He might go in the 5th or 6th round. He's starting next year somewhere. I'm telling you.
All right. Look at Nick Farabaugh dropping some sleepers on us. Well, we still got a lot more to talk about. This is the Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Today, we get to talk to safeties. That's going to be fun. I think there's a lot of safeties in this class. We'll talk more about them here on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast from Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh from SteelersNow.com. Thanks again for listening. Find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Back tomorrow, finishing out the week here at Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine.